can't believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
If you perform well in preseason, it's just preseason. And if you play poorly in preseason, it's because you're horrible. Preseason analysis makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And that's the big takeaway I have after what I saw from Shedeur Sanders this past Friday, for my old Cleveland Browns. How about that? Do the Browns have a quarterback? Do they may have not stumble upon. I don't think anyone stumbled upon Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, a lot of noise surrounding Shedeur Sanders. But did the Browns make a Browns decision by taking Shedeur Sanders, or did they maybe finally find a quarterback that is going to have the personality, going to have the mental toughness, and most importantly, have the skill set to finally solve an issue that this franchise has just been trying to figure out since they returned to Cleveland decades ago? I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show. We welcome you in. Happy Monday. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I know that I'm going to come across very hypocritical here because I've been very critical of the Shedeur Sanders thing, and that's what I want to open up the show with. We're going to get into the Bengals coming up around the corner. We'll get into the quarterback battle that's happening in Columbus. It sounds like Ohio State is far from being able to definitively answer who the quarterback is, even though I think we know who is going to be the starter. Sounds like the fact that Ohio State's taking so long to definitively announce it, I don't think that's a good thing, but we'll get to that coming up. But I do want to open up with the Shedeur Sanders news. Not really news, but reaction. What I'm annoyed with already is, to the kid's credit, he went out there and balled out and did exactly what he's supposed to. Actually, he didn't do what he was supposed to. He was not supposed to succeed. So many people out there said that the Browns were setting them up to fail, or him up to fail. What up, Ro? Ro's watching live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Ro, hope you're doing well. Happy Monday. We'll talk about your Bengals coming up in a moment. But all I kept hearing in the buildup that week was that the Browns were setting up Shedeur Sanders to fail, and all I could think of the whole time is, why would Cleveland do that? Cleveland is in desperate need of finding their franchise quarterback. They are in desperate need of finding their Joe Burrow. They're in desperate need of finding their Lamar Jackson. They're hoping. We've watched, by the way, as far as the rookie quarterback position is concerned, the NFL is coming off back-to-back seasons where a new benchmark has been set for what we deem the best rookie quarterback season of all time. C.J. Stroud came in 2 years ago with the Houston Texans and had an amazing rookie season, and we deem that the best rookie season of all time. Statistically, it was the best season of all time. And then on top of that, when you take the results of what he did to help the team win and to win at such a high level, we deemed him that. A year later, Jaden Daniels gets drafted by the Commanders, and guess what? The same exact thing. We deemed that to be the number one rookie season of all time. Now the Browns, who with not a very talented quarterback draft class whatsoever, and the Browns took 2 rookie quarterbacks in the draft this year, could the Browns be the team that has the quarterback that's going to make it 3 straight years where we talk about the rookie season being captured, the best rookie season of all time being captured by, a new rookie? Could that be the case? Could the Browns have potentially stumbled upon that? Maybe. Shedeur Sanders, the way he looked on Friday night, as far as the poise and just the presence in the pocket, the throws he was making, he wasn't just stepping up in the pocket and throwing to wide open receivers. He was squeezing it into pockets that he had no business squeezing those passes into. One of the big strengths of Shedeur Sanders coming out of college was the fact that everyone beat up on Colorado, talked about how bad Colorado was, how bad their run game was, how bad their offensive line was. And outside of course, the Heisman wide receiver that Shedeur had, not a whole lot of other weapons to really work with over in old Colorado. And despite all of that, he put up the numbers that he did. He had no protection, constantly was confident stepping up in the pocket, scrambled if he needed to, extended plays that needed to be extended. To Shedeur's credit, he did all of that at Colorado, and he's going to, he's in a place right now, especially playing with non-first teamers. He's not playing with any potential starters. He's playing with all rookies and all, second, third team options. And to go out there and do what he did, that's exactly what he did at Colorado. And if he could do that at Colorado without a whole ton of weapons, without an offensive line, with no defense as well. What would Shedeur Sanders do as a rookie when he has good wide receivers, when he has a good offensive line, when he has a run game? And, a complimentary defense. Maybe, just maybe, the Browns might have stumbled upon their franchise quarterback. Maybe, just maybe. Well, all the news is about taking Dylan Gabriel early. That, to me, the mistake was the Dylan Gabriel pick. I don't think anyone makes a big deal about the Shedeur Sanders pick if there's no Dylan Gabriel taken early. The Browns' mistake was not taking Shedeur Sanders. It was drafting Dylan Gabriel. And I don't even know if Shedeur Sanders is truly going to be the Browns' franchise quarterback moving forward, but I absolutely love everything that I saw this past Friday night. And I think the thing about it is, and I'm seeing it on social media already, the bottom line is if he would have played like crap on Friday, you would have deemed him to be a horrible quarterback. He played very, very good on Friday. Made both his touchdown throws. They weren't wide open wide receivers that, any that I could have thrown the ball to. He squeezed it in pockets, making throws on the run, and was making NFL caliber throws with backups against starters. So I don't know how anyone could be critical of Shedeur Sanders at this point, just based off that performance. I'm not saying that he should be the week 1 starter yet. I'm not saying that the Browns have their franchise quarterback. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is he silenced a lot of people with that performance on Friday. But then what I keep seeing is, well, it's preseason. Let's not overreact, which I get. But if he would have played poorly, you guys would not have come on here and you would not have gone to social media and say, he played poorly, but come on, guys, it's preseason. Who cares? No, you would deem him a horrible quarterback if he played poorly in the preseason. So why is it when he has an outstanding performance as a rookie in his very first preseason game with no starters, hardly any reps throughout the week to prepare him for that game, why is he not going to get that praise? Because why? The Shedeur personality drives you up the wall because it's the Browns, because the majority of my listeners are Bengals fans. I would love to know what he's going to have to do to win people over as far as that's concerned, because you could only win people over with what opportunities have been presented to you, and what opportunities have been presented to him, he's knocked out of the park. Since being drafted, he arrived in Cleveland the very next day. They didn't even have to arrive until the next week. He's been out in the community doing so much community service. He's been out there working his behind off. And by the way, none of that moved me really. I mean, those are things that you should do as a potential leader and captain of a team. So, okay, cool. He's doing what he's supposed to. Okay. But the fact that more roadblocks put in front of him and he's able to overcome that and ball out the way he did this Friday, I think all that did is create more. It shouldn't. That's the sad thing. It just created more drama for Cleveland, because now the Browns, who I think have a plan, the plan is to have Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback, or potentially Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is the backup quarterback. Dylan Gabriel's third string quarterback. And maybe they just didn't want the Shedeur thing to work, but that's, I understand people's thinking on that, but why would they select Shedeur to begin with? And if Shedeur really is a good quarterback, why would they do everything they could to not put him out there? That's why I was mocking this mindset last week. Everyone out there that was saying that the Browns, Lewis, Riddick, and others, the Browns are setting him up to fail. Well, I think they did a pretty poor job of setting him up to fail, because to me, it looks like Kevin Stefanski, a 2-time coach of the year, had Shedeur Sanders pretty locked in and ready to go. It sounds like even with backups, backup offensive line, backup pass catchers going up against starters for the Panthers, a good defense, by the way. It sounds like Kevin Stefanski had him ready to go. That kind of goes against the entire BS mindset of, they were setting him up to fail. I think they set him up to look pretty damn good. And I like the offense of Kevin Stefanski. And I like the presence of Shedeur Sanders out there this past Friday. And if Shedeur Sanders does not ultimately become the starting quarterback, if he ultimately does not win over this job, it's because he's not good enough, and it's not because this team was out to get him. The team did a good job of preparing him for Friday night. He looked prepared. He was prepared, and he balled out and was fantastic. It's not, like I said, there's a lot of things. He could have thrown a lot of touchdowns to wide open wide receivers standing alone on the sideline or in the end zone. No, those were NFL caliber throws. 23 attempts, completing 14 of those. 6 yards a pass, again, 2 touchdowns, and just an unbelievable game. And again, Shedeur Sanders, the other ability too, something you're not going to get with Joe Flacco, is just his ability to be able to extend plays. And that's what we saw. 4 carries for 19 yards. You're not designing plays, especially in preseason, for him to run. But when plays broke down, just like we saw at Colorado, he was able to use his athleticism and make plays with his legs. I'm buying into the Shedeur thing now. I'm starting to kind of lean into it a little bit. I didn't want to lean into it because I feel like I feel like the Browns aren't setting him up to fail. I feel like he sets himself up to fail, and his dad sets him up to fail because they talk such a big game. Dion was able to talk such a big game during his entire athletic career, but he was good enough to back it up. Your son was drafted in the 5th round and talks and acts and carries himself as if he was taken in the 1st. And the only way to get away with that is to go play like a quarterback that should have been taken in the 1st. And let's be clear, up until the build up to this draft, all last year, everyone talked about how he would be taken in the 1st round. And maybe, just maybe, the Browns got a 1st-round caliber quarterback in the 5th round, and they may have stumbled upon their starting quarterback. It's the Justin Kinner Show here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We're live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, live on the Justin Kinner Show YouTube channel. So make sure you go and follow us, check us out, and you can hang out with us each and every day at 3 o'clock right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Okay, to the comments we go. Let me set this up to where, we can all, see these. I think that would kind of help at the end of the day. But what up, Ron? Ron Howard says if he starts, the Bengals will make him look good. Couldn't start with a crappy defense. I think because of how bad the Bengals defense is even more so why I want to see Shedeur out there. I don't want Shedeur to debut against a tough defense. We see, when baseball, like I wasn't a fan of the Cincinnati Reds, even though it kind of worked out that night. I wasn't a huge fan of the Cincinnati Reds taking their new young number 1 prospect and throwing him to the Wolves. And hey, you're going to debut against the Yankees. And guess what? Your second start's going to be against the Boston Red Sox in Boston. And your third start's going to be against a top 5 lineup in the Phillies. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't a fan of that approach, but at the end of the day, some of those kind of worked out, right? But as we sit here today, they open up against the Bengals. I don't know if I want to see Shedeur debut at Baltimore. The Packers have a great defense. The Lions have a great defense. The Vikings have a great defense. The Steelers have a great defense. Now you're saying, well, if I'm afraid of all those defenses, then Shedeur is never going to play. I'm not afraid of the Bengals defense. And I think to debut in the NFL week 1 against that defense, to kind of get your feet wet a bit, I think that's the perfect scenario to take advantage of that weak, embarrassingly bad defense that the Cincinnati Bengals possess. But we will see if he truly is winning over that front office and that coaching staff. I think he has to be the week 1 starter. Because if this truly is about finding out who your quarterback is, with Arch Manning floating out there and the talented whether it's Drew Aller and all these other big names that are in college that the Browns are reportedly truly trying to position themselves to grab, then you need to make sure that you don't have a quarterback on this roster right now. Because what we saw Friday, while everyone, including me, was skeptical about Shedeur Sanders, I'm not as skeptical anymore. I'm starting to believe that this guy can actually play, and the Browns may have something special here. And wasting time by sitting him behind Joe Flacco, and I like Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco will help the Browns win football games, but Joe Flacco could be a guy that could bring some draft pieces back if the Browns need to move on from him. Shedeur, need to see more, but I saw enough on Friday to admit that, okay, maybe I was a little wrong about Shedeur early on. 937-518-1410. Browns fans, how we feel about the debut of Shedeur Sanders in his preseason debut this past Friday night. I think he looked the part. No doubt. Keith Tolliver. Keith, how are you, my friend? He says, do the Browns have a running game? Needs to throw it away instead of running out of bounds. Look, this Quinshon Judkins thing, I think that the Browns bring Nick Chubb back. They can go back, they would do it. But again, when you draft a guy, you don't draft him knowing that he's going to make the mistake that Quinshon did, of course. But they're in a tough spot right now when it does come to who their weapons are. I really do like the running back that they took out of Tennessee. I'm a big fan of his. Dylan Sampson, though, what I was confused about, only 2 carries in that game Friday night. Armani Marshall, 8 carries, for 32 yards. I mean, no one really popped on Friday night. I would like to see that run game kind of show a little bit more life. But Sampson, it's unfortunate what happened to Quinshon Judkins, no doubt. But Dylan Sampson, huge opportunity for him, although only 2 carries this past Friday. We'll see. But yeah, you're going to nitpick the, throwing it away versus running out of bounds. Yes, I mean, those are mistakes that even veteran quarterbacks make, but no doubt about it. Ron says there is still a reason he was drafted 4th round, played well, but had nothing to lose. He wasn't drafted 4th round because of skill, in my opinion. I don't believe in the whole collusion thing, but I mean, there's certain things about his personality that scared teams off. that's on him. He dropped to the 5th round, not because he can't play football. And I think that you can have the personality he does if you could play football. And I think he could play football. He showed that Friday night. Keith says, you're right on. If he sucked, the narrative would be so effing bad. And that's my frustration with preseason coverage. I get it. I'm not saying Shedeur is Joe Burrow. I'm not saying the Browns found their Joe Burrow or their Lamar Jackson. But if he played poorly, you guys would be putting all the stock in the world to his poor performance on Friday if it was bad. But you won't give him any kind of credit whatsoever for his great performance. Preseason's only preseason when you play great, but you stink no matter what, regardless of whether it's preseason or regular. It doesn't make sense. Hypocrites for those out there. But let's pick up with this. We also have some Bengals talk around the corner. We had Jay Morrison on the show last Friday. He asked him, when does he think this Trey Hendrickson drama is going to come to a close? He had a very big prediction that if it does come true, it would be huge for the Bengals. We'll talk about that when we come back as well. All right, and we are back. Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. By the way, if you are a wrestling fan, AEW is going to be live in Cincinnati coming up Wednesday and Thursday night. We have tickets available. If you text AEW to 937-518-1410, you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to win these tickets. Again, text AEW to 937-518-1410 for your chance to win a pair of tickets to see AEW live in Cincinnati coming up later on this week. Shows on Wednesday and Thursday. We got tickets for both. Benjamin Chimera, who hosts Card Subject to Change. He's a professional wrestler himself. In fact, helped train John Moxley, who was Dean Ambrose in WWE. But him and Ben, who host the show with us on Thursday nights, train together, work together, and John Moxley is going to be on with him tomorrow on our social media channels and on his show on Thursday. So we'll have that coming up later on for you here this week as well. For those of you who follow wrestling or into wrestling, there you go. Opened up with the reaction to Shedeur Sanders and his big performance this past Friday night. Look, I know I could possibly be hypocritical on this. I've been very critical when it comes to Shedeur Sanders because, for everyone out there that is continuously pushing this narrative that the Browns are trying to sabotage his run in Cleveland, I just don't think that makes any sense, especially because if Shedeur Sanders is really, really good and Cleveland is trying to do everything they can to make sure he's not, why would that make sense? Could someone answer that? Like, why would that, like Louis Riddick, who's a very, very smart individual, who knows more about football than I ever will, but like, can we stop? Football teams are not trying to find reasons to not be good. Cleveland does a very good job of that without trying, okay? They try to be good and fail. They would not try to not be good. They're not good while trying to be good. If Shedeur Sanders was really, really good, the Browns would not be doing everything in their power to keep him from being good, which that's such a stupid mindset. I'm sorry. It just is. Louis Riddick, he's too smart of an individual to actually think that way. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why I'm getting this annoyed with it, but it's just ridiculous thinking that, oh man, Shedeur Sanders is good and the Browns are just doing everything they can to mess it up. No. Because what I also saw was a lot of media doing the, man, see, Shedeur overcoming Cleveland, overcoming this. You mean to tell me that the two-time coach of the year and Kevin Stefanski didn't play a role in having him prepared and ready to go? You bring up all the reasons. He had limited time with the ones, had limited time to prepare for that preseason game on Friday night. He had all these limitations with the injuries to Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, and the fact that you're not going to play Joe Flacco to begin with. The fact that all of those roadblocks were in the way. And yes, Shedeur overcame those roadblocks, but he was prepared to play by a head coach in Kevin Stefanski, who's a two-time coach of the year. And I don't hear any of those delusional media members coming out and saying, oh, maybe Cleveland wasn't doing everything in their power to keep him from succeeding. Actually, they did a pretty good job. He did a great job. I'm not discrediting him, but I'm also not going to give credit to Kevin Stefanski because I think that they had him ready to play. They had him prepared. The offensive scheme, everything that they had prepared and drew up and planned and called, it worked. And he looked lights out on Friday night. Back up, no starters on the offensive line. No start, no main pat, no Tillman, no Jerry Jeudy, none of those guys. It was a lot of rookies. We saw a lot of rookies on both sides of the ball, a lot of second-year players on both sides of the ball. He wasn't given a whole lot to work with. Could have confused me with that because he made it work with whoever was out there. And that's what you want when you have a quarterback that you're going to put a lot of pressure on to help carry your franchise. Can they go out there and deliver regardless of who's out there with them? And he proved that he could do that. But to do that, you have to be prepared. Caleb Williams was not very good in Chicago last year, had no support system around him. That's why they moved on and brought in a new coaching staff because he was watching film by himself. He was preparing alone. No one was there to show him the ropes. Cleveland's doing that. Shedeur Sanders, if he doesn't make it, if he's not the starter, if he's not named the starter at some point, if he ultimately is not their franchise quarterback, it's not because Cleveland was sabotaging him. It's because he will ultimately sabotage himself. I'm also tired of hearing the same narrative when it comes to Baker Mayfield, that the Browns ruined it with Baker Mayfield. His personality, he made so many mistakes during his run in Cleveland And I know this because you guys told me. I didn't tell you that. You guys told me. Everyone was sick of the cockiness and the arrogance. Everyone was tired of him talking about his teammates' money, throwing coaches under the bus and all of this. Like every single one of you who are not Browns fans reminded me of how bad Baker was and how much of a joke Cleveland would be if they actually paid him that $35-40 million a year. And then Cleveland moves on from him, and then Cleveland's a joke. I can't believe they didn't keep Baker Mayfield. Can you believe they didn't keep Baker Mayfield? What a joke of a franchise. You guys like to move the GD goalposts. It's annoying. Baker Mayfield's personality cost him in Cleveland the first time, just like it would have cost him pretty much anywhere. Okay, and that's the same thing that'll happen here. Baker showed that he had the skill set, but it didn't match the personality. The personality for Shedeur matched the performance on Friday night. He continues to match his personality with the performance like what we saw Friday. Good things are going to happen. Now, I wanted to see how that was going to carry over into practice today, and I found this to be pretty interesting. Shedeur was not getting a lot of reps and opportunities in practice with first and second string. He wasn't getting a whole lot of reps at all. But today, he had the second most reps. He was 10 of 14 and 2 touchdowns during their passing drills and 7-on-7 and all that fun stuff at camp. Outside of Joe Flacco, he got the second most. And by the way, it wasn't because Dillon Gabriel wasn't out there or Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett practiced, so did Dillon Gabriel. Shedeur, because of that performance on Friday, got the attention of that coaching staff, and he's been getting the second most snaps, since that preseason game on Friday. That's something to keep an eye on. I got to see, when is Cleveland's next preseason game? They'll be at Philadelphia coming up on the 16th, so later on this week. Okay, they're going to be playing at Philadelphia. Here's the deal. If I'm Kevin Stefanski, I want to see the next layer to it. I don't play Shedeur as long, but I want to see him play with the ones. You don't need to play Joe Flacco. I think we've seen enough of Shedeur that he needs to be competing for that backup spot, and putting Kenny Pickett out there doesn't make any damn sense. Kenny Pickett's not a long-term solution in Cleveland. Stop. Shedeur should get the start this week. And then after he's done, then you bring Dillon Gabriel in with the same second-string scrubs that you threw to Shedeur and see if Dillon Gabriel can elevate those guys the way we saw from Shedeur, and that's how you figure it out. Because if Shedeur Sanders goes out there with the ones against Philadelphia's defense coming up later on this week and he balls out, and then you bring Dillon Gabriel in after with the second-string guys, third-string, fourth-string guys that Shedeur had to play with, and Dillon Gabriel doesn't elevate those guys, I think that gives you your answer. I think that's all the visual and the evidence you need as far as that's concerned. I think that's the best way to test it out. Kenny Pickett, don't need you. Joe Flacco, probably going to be the week 1 starter, probably for the first month, and then ease Shedeur in. Or maybe Shedeur goes out there, balls out with the starters, and then you start shopping Joe Flacco around, and I'm fine with that too. Or you look at Joe Flacco and say, we really want you. We had a great run with you in Cleveland the first time. We really want you to be a part of this. Will you be a backup to Shedeur and be ready for anything that's thrown our way? And then you have Dillon Gabriel as your third string, and then you move on from Kenny Pickett and you shop him around. But Kenny Pickett has no business on this roster, especially if Shedeur is the guy that we saw this past Friday night. A lot of Bengals fans listen to this show. I get you don't give a rip about Cleveland, but you do give a rip about Cleveland because you should give a rip about Cleveland the same way you give a rip about Pittsburgh and the Ravens. Anything that happens with them impacts the Bengals. If Shedeur Sanders truly is a franchise-level quarterback, that impacts the Bengals. So I think that's important. We'll see what look, I think Shedeur's the most interesting quarterback in the NFL right now. And I think Cleveland's the most interesting team in the NFL right now. We didn't even get to talk about the fact that, look, I thought that at the end of the day, I think the defense is going to be way better than what people are giving them credit for. I like the Schweiziger kid from UCLA, 6 tackles. 4 of those were solo tackles, couple, tackles for a loss. Love that. I'm liking what I'm seeing up and down from this Bengals team. And by the way, Mason Graham looked pretty damn good too. So I think that was a good compromise to move on from that number 2 pick to get Mason Graham an additional 2nd-round pick and 1st-round pick for this next year's draft. I think that was still a smart move at the end of the day. Not as flashy as getting the Heisman winner, but I think it's going to be way more impactful at the end of the day. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Jay Morrison was on with us this past Friday heading into the weekend, coming off the Bengals Thursday night preseason game. Of course, we talked a lot about, it's not a surprise. Joe Burrow balled out, with Jamar Chase in that preseason game. 10 pass attempts, completing 9 of those, threw 2 touchdowns. One of those, of course, to Jamar Chase. It's not a surprise. That's like, I don't think anyone was wondering, man, how's the offense going to look when Joe Burrow's healthy and Jamar Chase is out there? We know how this offense looks. It's pretty damn explosive. It's hard to stop. We know that. That's why they invested so much money into it. Joe Burrow is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Jamar Chase, highest paid non-quarterback wide receiver in the league. T. Higgins, it's the most expensive wide receiver room in the league. I know who the Bengals are offensively. I didn't see anything that everyone out there, man, can you believe how good Joe Burrow looked? Yeah, Joe Burrow's good. He has 2 number 1 wide receivers. He has Jamar Chase. Yes, he's good. We know that. Jamar Chase is good. This offense is good. We also know how bad the defense is. And I do find it interesting because I think they're in a predicament here. They have to find a way to get this Trey Hendrickson deal done. I'm not saying anything you guys don't know already, but at the end of the day, it does come down to, Shedeur Stewart showed signs on Thursday of that explosiveness and just that overall strength and power of being able to get, into the backfield to get to the quarterback. And imagine that type of pressure on one side of the D-line when you also have Trey Hendrickson on the other. And this is why I asked Jay Morrison, I'm like, does the better, when you think about the way that Shamar, looked this past Thursday, does that put the Bengals in a situation where see, we don't need Trey Hendrickson? I think that the better that Shedeur Stewart is, the more you need Trey Hendrickson. People are like, man, if Shedeur Stewart balls out, that all of a sudden Trey Hendrickson loses leverage because they have Shedeur Stewart. No, to me, I look at it as if Shedeur Stewart balls out and is a monster on that defensive line as a rookie, I think it adds even more pressure to the Bengals to get Trey Hendrickson in there. Because now you have a complimentary pass rusher that's going to create havoc and make noise and change just the whole outlook, vibe, and feel of this defense. I saw way too many people saying, I liked what I saw on just a limited time as Shedeur Stewart. If that's the case, we don't need Trey Hendrickson. That's ridiculous. I've been not critical of Trey Hendrickson. I just have basically been saying I don't put him in the upper tier of pass rushers like I do with, Max Crosby and obviously, the Nick Bosa's of the world. And obviously with the Browns have Myles Garrett and the Steelers with Watt. I don't put him in that category with those guys. Those guys, when I watch them, I could feel their impact. I could feel their presence on the field. I don't get that same vibe with Hendrickson, but Hendrickson's production would just be magnified if he had a complimentary pass rusher and basically the skill set of what Shamar brings to the table. So the fact that you're getting that from him, I don't think that it replaces Trey Hendrickson. I think that it just almost makes it even more important that the Bengals find a way to get a deal done and get a deal done quickly. The Bengals, because of their historic slow starts or their recent slow starts, they don't have time for this BS back and forth with Trey Hendrickson. And I've said this before. If the Bengals eventually get a deal done, I'm going to mock them because at the end of the day, you were willing to get a deal done and you let this get noisy in an offseason that you shouldn't have let it get noisy. Joe Burrow was throwing a temper tantrum at Super Bowl Media Row about getting these deals done, and the Bengals did it, almost. This was finally supposed to be a quiet offseason. It was supposed to be that distraction-free offseason, a distraction-free camp. Everyone's paid. Everyone's fat and happy. You got your rookies that everyone's keeping an eye on, second-year guys, new defensive coordinator. It should have been all about that. Still talking about Trey Hendrickson. And this idea that because Shedeur Stewart is starting to look the part that, you don't need Trey Hendrickson. I think that the better that Shedeur Stewart is, the worse that it is to not have Trey Hendrickson out there with them. And this is why the Bengals are screwed no matter what, because if Shedeur Stewart is not good and he is a bust and he does not produce in the first month of the season, then it makes it even worse that you don't have Trey Hendrickson. One way or another, you need Trey Hendrickson out there, one way or another. I will respect them like crazy if it ultimately leads to Trey Hendrickson losing this little debate back and forth with them, this hold in, hold out, whatever. At the end of the day, Trey Hendrickson, to me, if he doesn't get his way, is he willing to miss games? If he's willing to miss games, miss the whole season. I'll respect that approach. I'll respect the Bengals' approach of saying we're not putting you out there. But at the same time, if the Bengals have any intention of truly signing him, stop with the games and just get it done. How soon can they get it done? That's the big question. How soon can they get it done is the big question. And I asked that to Jay Morrison this past Friday when he was on the show with us, they're going to get a deal done at some point, right? Here's Jay Morrison.
Where do you see
Stewart? It got ugly. We thought he was going back to Texas A&M. I mean, he was just
Stewart
going
got
to
ugly.
re-enter
We
the
thought he was
draft,
going
right?
back to Texas
Now
A&M.
he's out there. Trey Hendrickson will be back out there, right?
Now
like, where's this
he's out there.
Trey Hendrickson will be back out
to
there,
a Labor
right?
Day
like, where's
signing.
this one?
It just feels like
to a Labor
the
Day
Bengals never
signing.
do anything until
It
they
just
have
feels
to do
like
it.
they're just
the
not a
Bengals never do
proactive
anything until they
organization.
have to do it. They're just
I'm
not
sure
a
Trey,
proactive organization.
yeah, he likes football, but it's also nice.
I'm sure Trey,
easy in training camp.
yeah, he
Training camp
likes
is a bit of a
football, but it's
grind
also
for these
nice to
guys.
just kind of take it easy in training camp. Training camp
I
is a
don't-
bit of a grind for these
I
guys.
don't see there's any way that
I
they
don't-
can't make
I
this
don't
work
see
with
there's
him.
any way
and
they can't.
it just makes
make
sense.
this
You know,
work
you
with
saw
him.
this with Jamar
And
Chase.
It just makes
Last year,
sense. You know, you
Jesse
saw
Bates.
this with
It was a
Jamar
different
Chase.
situation with Jesse Bates where he didn't
Last
sign
year,
the franchise tag. It wasn't about an
different
extension.
situation with Jesse Bates
But
where he didn't sign the franchise
After
tag. It
that
wasn't
third
about an
preseason
extension.
game, that's when
But
these deals tend to get
After
done.
that
and-
third preseason
and,
game, that's when
I
these
just-
deals tend
we
to
have
get
the-
done. And
the bet on our
I just
podcast,
we have
and
the
I picked
the bet on our
Friday of
podcast
Labor Day weekend
and
is when they're going to
picked
finally
the-
get him in
the
there, get him
Friday
signed,
of Labor Day
and then
weekend
he'll have
is, I
that
think,
whole
when they're
next
going to
week
finally
to
get him
ramp
in
up
there,
and
get him
ready for
signed, and then he'll have that whole next week to ramp up and get ready for Cleveland.
Again, last week on Friday when he jumped on with us, Labor Day weekend. Labor Day weekend is when he predicts that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to finally get Trey Hendrickson in there. And again, that's just a couple weeks from now. But again, at the same time, it's like, if in fact Jay is right and they do get Trey Hendrickson a deal done by then, this is what always fascinates me about this, because like these deals always get done. It always gets real ugly and then it gets done. Like this Micah Parsons thing, it's ugly in Dallas. It'll get done. We've seen Watt in Pittsburgh. There was the rumors of, him being possibly traded. It gets a little dicey, gets a little ugly, and then it doesn't get ugly. It's fine. He's out there. I get that that's how it works, but I just don't understand that mindset, especially if you're Cincinnati. If you're the ownership and the arrogance of the ownership, just to sit back and say, well, that's just how this stuff goes. I just find that to be foolish, because you can't afford to just risk a slow start to the season because of the arrogance and the egos of the numbskulls in that front office who have really not achieved anything. You could say, well, they put a team together that got to a Super Bowl. Yeah. And then they quickly screwed it up. They didn't build upon that Super Bowl appearance. They got worse from that time forward. I'm not going to give them any credit. I give Detroit credit. Detroit, who technically hasn't been to a Super Bowl, they were bad. Then they got good, and they've gotten better and better each season. They've built upon it. They've spent a ton of money. They've paid guys early. They add talent. Like, to me, Detroit, that front office, yes, they need to get to a Super Bowl. Yes, they need to win a Super Bowl. But Cincinnati's doing this. Oh, we've been to a Super Bowl, so we're ahead of you. If anything, your number one accomplishment is also the biggest glaring issue with your franchise. You got to a Super Bowl and did literally nothing with it. You didn't get better. They are significantly worse today than what they were 3 years ago. And there was never a point from that year where they went to the Super Bowl where they got better. They got worse the year after, even though they did get to the AFC Championship game. Got to give them credit there. But they had to dig themselves out of that hole too. And then since then, they've missed the playoffs the last 2 years. So I sit here and I look at this. I'm not giving this front office any credit. I don't care how other teams do it. Dallas in this tug of war with Micah Parsons, Pittsburgh with Watt. Myles Garrett wanted out of Cleveland, but they ultimately get it done. Cleveland, say what you want about them. They pay their guys. They take care of their guys. There's really it's really not up for debate. Cincinnati's a different story. So my thing is, if it is done by Labor Day, what deal would he agree to on Labor Day? What is it in the what is the positioning of the contract on Labor Day that the Bengals just weren't willing to budge on the day before Labor Day? Like, what is it on Labor Day that they're going to agree to with him that they just can't get done today just to get him out there and to get this team rolling? There's not 4 preseason games anymore. There's only 3. And now you only have 2 left because already 1 in the books. And obviously the defense was bad, limited Shedeur Stewart. On top of that, you're going to see much more of him against Washington coming up. I get it. We talk about certain things when it comes to sports and just generalities because, well, that's just how it is. Well, I don't care how it is. I think it's stupid how it is. I think it's dumb that these teams who are willing to pay these guys, but they want to draw it out and risk pissing them off and creating headlines and creating drama in the locker room and creating distractions that impact your own team. That's why I said I don't compliment the Bengals often. I will compliment them. I will be a big fan of theirs if they decide to not budge when it comes to Trey Hendrickson. You're under contract. We don't want to budge because of your age. That's just something that we believe in. That's our philosophy. We're not going to budge on it. And if it ultimately leads to him missing games, a game, multiple games, a month, 2 months, a season, and they stood their ground, I'll respect the hell out of that. I will respect that like you wouldn't believe. But what I won't respect is potentially creating chaos for your own organization. The front office is going to give him ultimately what he wants at some point. Then why not just give it to him now so that you limit the distractions? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow's healthy. They're all paid. No one's complaining. No one's upset. And the one guy that is upset, the one guy that is creating problems, is because you're the ringleader. You're the circus leader of this. You are creating this problem. We're willing to pay him. We're willing to give him what he wants, but we're going to let him sweat it out a bit. So that what? So that it leads to more distractions, less time with him out on the field on a team that has a new defensive coordinator. Yes, Jamar Stewart's starting to show signs of life, but don't you need him out there as much as you can to create some kind of chemistry in that defensive line with those two to create a rapport together? I will respect the Bengals if they stick to their guns and don't pay him. Or don't extend him, if you will. But if they ultimately do what Jay Morrison just said and get it done by Labor Day weekend, to me, that is more of a problem. That means that they were the ones creating the problem for the team, that they were the ones that were leading to this distraction. You can't help injuries. You know, it's unfortunate. You can't help when players make off the field mistakes. You can't help that. What you can help is giving a player what he wants, that you know you're willing to give him what he wants, but you want to make him wait it out a bit. For what? You're only hurting yourself in this situation. So if the Bengals do give him what he wants, they're morons because not because they give him what he wants, but because they created all this noise for no reason. If they're willing to create all this noise because they're not willing to budge and it ultimately leads to him missing games, kudos to them. They have a philosophy. They're sticking to it. No arguments here. All right. It's the Justin Kinner Show. It's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. College football, the very first AP poll came out today. Looks a little different than the coaches poll. We'll discuss that when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show. Coming up this Friday at Riverbend over in Cincinnati. Thomas Rhett going to be performing live. We got tickets. Text BOOTS to 937-518-1410. Text BOOTS to 937-518-1410 for your chance to win a pair of tickets to see Thomas Rhett at Riverbend coming up later on this week. All right, it's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We welcome you back. Switching over to college football real quick. I want to get to the AP poll stuff in a moment. Some developments regarding the Reds pitching staff as the Reds sit a game and a half out of a final playoff spot. They start a series tonight. And again, the show will be cut just a little short because of that, but they're going to be in action coming up here in the series with the Phillies at Great American Ballpark. 6:10 the first pitch, 5:40 coverage will begin for that. Chase Burns, his role with the team moving forward is being discussed. What that means could be a potential move to the bullpen. It could be him being shut down. Yeah, that's right. We got that coming up for you here, so stay tuned nonetheless. Look, Ohio State, they open up the season coming up here in just a few weeks. And we've talked a lot about the matchup with Texas. It's being dubbed by Fox as the greatest regular season kickoff matchup of all time. No other matchup has been bigger than this Ohio State-Texas matchup to kick off a season. I disagree with that, but it's one of the biggest, and no doubt, it definitely feels like it. Two teams who are national championship contenders, two teams who were national championship contenders last year, two teams that met in the college football playoff with the trip to the national championship on the line, and two teams that played in an instant classic to help set the tone for the Buckeyes championship matchup with Notre Dame that they ultimately won to win Ryan Day's first championship. But they did that because they went out in the transfer portal and they got Will Howard, who Will Howard was a little up and down throughout the season, but honestly, they don't win that without him. Will Howard was absolutely unbelievable in that playoff run a year ago. They do not get that done. As great as the defense was, as good as the run game was, absolutely no way do they win that without that Will Howard. And the Will Howard that arrived in that game against Tennessee, that arrived against Oregon in the Rose Bowl, that showed up and made some of the toughest throws I've ever seen him make against Texas in that semifinal, and then the plays that he made against Notre Dame, one of the best defenses in college football, to cap off a national championship. They don't get that done without him. But they don't have him anymore. They now have to turn their attention towards, of course, Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz. And although it does feel like the quarterback situation at this point it's Julian Sayin's job, the fact that it has not been announced yet, I don't think is Ryan Day just trying to, motivate future quarterbacks that when you come to Ohio State, you're going to have a chance to win the job, even, deep and well into camp. I don't think that's what this is. I'm starting to get major Kyle McCord vibes. And Kyle McCord, I still think got a little bit too much hate. Statistically, Kyle McCord was not bad at all. He just didn't have that it factor, right? Will Howard, to me, didn't have the it factor for the longest time last season. And it didn't help that nobody had the it factor in the regular season finale against Michigan. But there was something about Will Howard when the playoffs started that it factor arrived. So it can arrive late in the season. Luckily, there was an extended playoff to allow that it factor to develop, of course, but nonetheless. Kyle McCord just didn't have that it factor. He just didn't have it. Didn't make fans feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And that's the unfortunate thing about this. Julian and Kyle McCord was a big prospect coming out. Everyone was a huge fan of him coming out of high school, of course. He was a big commit and just never looked the part, never developed into it. And at that year in that quarterback battle, I remember I defended Ryan Day saying, hey, look, every quarterback that he has touched has turned to gold. Dwayne Haskins got him to the NFL. All right. Justin Fields to the NFL. CJ Stroud to the NFL. So when it came time for the Kyle McCord experiment, I said, I'm not going to doubt Ryan Day because he's made it work with every quarterback. It didn't work with Kyle McCord, but he got Will Howard and it worked with Will Howard. Every quarterback that Ryan Day has worked with, it has worked in some capacity, whether the offense playing at an all-time elite level or winning a national championship. Like, he won with Dwayne Haskins. He won with CJ Stroud. He won with Justin Fields. Technically, he won with Kyle McCord, but we know the games that matter, the wins that matter. And he obviously won it all with Will Howard. Will Howard, to me, is not a better college quarterback than what CJ Stroud or Justin Fields was. Hell, we could debate if you would take Dwayne Haskins or Will Howard. I'm taking Dwayne Haskins, but like Will Howard at least makes you stop and pause a little bit because of how good he was in those last 4 games last year. So I bring this up because should I still have that same confidence in Ryan Day when it comes to who they're going to name as the starting quarterback? I believe it's going to be Julian Sayin, but the fact that there just seems to be some concern about these quarterbacks right now that no one's running away with it. There's multiple reports that are coming out that Julian Sayin throws the better football. It just looks different coming out of his hands. He looks like the cleaner, crisper quarterback. But in practices and drills and when they're scrimmaging, it's Lincoln Kienholz that's leading this offense on scoring drives. And you hear these reports coming out, and you're like, man, it's a very competitive one. Sometimes when it's competitive, I want to know what that means. Is it that the favorite to get the job is playing down to the level of the guy competing for it, or is the guy competing for it all of a sudden just raising his level to the extreme to where he's on even playing ground with Julian Sayin? Is Lincoln Kienholz all of a sudden just emerged as an elite level quarterback that is playing at an elite level with Julian Sayin, and that's what's making the coaches hesitate? Or is Julian Sayin, who's supposed to be separated from Kienholz, playing down to his level and making the coaches scratch their heads saying, who the heck's going to be the quarterback? Ryan Day was asked about this quarterback battle. Adam King, who does TV over in Columbus, tweeted this out earlier, saying that Ryan Day says that the quarterback battle here compares to the one between Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins. Now, Adam King, the reporter, says that feels like a good sign. That was 2 really great quarterbacks battling it out. Look, here's where I disagree with all that. Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins got the job because, man, Joe Burrow, there's a lot of Joe Burrow was hurt stories out there. There seems to be a pattern that was even developing all the way back in college, but that's besides the point. Joe Burrow got hurt, wasn't available for a lot of those camps, and was really very behind. And it ultimately led to Dwayne Haskins pulling away. I don't look at it like that. By the way, Joe Burrow was an elite level quarterback, or developed into one. Dwayne Haskins was an elite level quarterback. Is Julian Sayin as good as Dwayne Haskins? Is Lincoln Kienholz as good as Joe Burrow? So I get, and this is what Buckeye media does. Everything is sunshine, rainbows. It's okay to question things. It's okay to say, hey, maybe these quarterbacks haven't developed at the level of which we thought. It's okay to say maybe the Buckeyes should have gone to the transfer portal. It served them well last time because they won a national championship. Maybe they'll learn. By the way, who knows? I'm just going to sit back and watch this, but I disagree wholeheartedly. I even disagree with national championship head coach Ryan Day. And he would know better than me, I guess. But excuse me for not buying into the fact that I totally disagree that it reminds him of the battle between Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow. There's not one single comparison between these two and Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow. Lincoln Kienholz is healthy. He has never been good enough to win. I guess if you want to compare him to Joe Burrow was never good enough to win the starting job at Ohio State, and that's Lincoln Kienholz. But if that all of a sudden makes Julian Sayin the Dwayne Haskins in this story, I disagree with that too. Dwayne Haskins was good. I have no clue how good Julian Sayin is. And before you say, well, we didn't know how good Dwayne Haskins was until he got out there. Dwayne Haskins, when he got thrown out into that game against Michigan, we saw the greatness like right away. It was just, it popped off the field as far as that goes. So I disagree. So, Jeremy, Berman and Austin Ward on their podcast, put this note down earlier. They were saying on their podcast that they spoke to a lot of people who were at the scrimmage this past Saturday. And the update was that Julian Sayin had the best throws of the day. He made some of the bigger highlight throws. But as Kienholz, who performed better in team drills and led the offense down the field, neither quarterback has been consistent enough to prove that they are the guy, according to the podcast with Berm and Austin Ward. Guys, Dwayne Haskins was consistent. Joe Burrow was even good when healthy. These guys don't sound like they're consistent, and it just sounds like the coaches are like they're yet to. They want it to be Julian Sayin, but they can't commit to it because neither one of these quarterbacks is pulling away yet. Kienholz, you've been there for how long, and you can't pull away from Julian Sayin? Julian Sayin's supposed to be. He's the number 1 QB prospect in his class, and you can't pull away from Lincoln Kienholz. Like, I don't know what to say. I think it's okay as a Buckeye fan to be critical of this situation and say this team has national championship aspirations. They have a chance to repeat as national champions. The AP poll came out today. Ohio State coming in at number 3. That's great. Penn State ranked ahead of them at 2. Texas coming in at number 1. Well, I'm here to tell you, if this truly is a concern at quarterback, of neither quarterback being able to pull away from one another, neither quarterback being consistent enough, I'm here to tell you that Ohio State's not even the third best team in the country. If you don't have elite quarterback play, you're not going to be able to repeat as national champions. You're just not. Did you guys see the level that Will Howard had to elevate to get the team there? And these two are struggling in camp. And you're saying, well, okay, but get 12 games under the belt. Maybe they'll develop. Fine. I'm talking about, I'm giving my analysis based on where we're at sitting here in August. I think this is a concern. Do you guys think it's a concern? 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. Are you guys concerned about the reports coming out? Julian Sayin throws the better ball, makes better highlight throws. But Lincoln Kineholz in the scrimmage this past weekend, he was just more consistent even in team drills, and he was the only one leading the offense on scoring drives. I think there's a concern. I disagree with Ryan Day comparing it to the QB battle between Haskins and Joe Burrow. Because Joe Burrow didn't do enough to make it a quarterback battle. Dwayne Haskins was always going to be the guy. I talked to a lot of former Buckeyes who, at that time, Urban Meyer had already let them know, yeah, it's going to be Dwayne Haskins, but we got to let this thing play out a bit. I don't think that's what's going on here with Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kineholz. There was no negative reports of Dwayne Haskins being inconsistent or anything during his time leading into that season. There are reports of inconsistencies with Julian Sayin and Kineholz. I don't compare this at all. I don't think it's the same thing. 937-518-1410. Thoughts on the AP poll, thoughts on a conversation regarding the quarterbacks, anything on Shedeur Sanders and the Browns. We've covered a lot in the first hour and some change of the show. Let's go to the phones. We got Shaw waiting on us. Shaw, how are you, man? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, man. How you doing?
Good. Another day in paradise. What you got?
You've talked about all kinds of things today. So originally, obviously, called in about the Shedeur thing. So I'll try to hit everything.
We can start with Shedeur. Start with Shedeur.
Typically, I don't really take anything positive or negative out of preseason. We've talked about in other preseasons, and this is what I've told you before. What I take from the Shedeur thing the most is what you brought up that happened at practice today, that the coaches moved his reps up, and he started getting more of the one reps. That tells me that the coaches believe they did see something Friday evening that leads to believe that they think he should be receiving more one reps. Obviously, that's what that says. I don't really take anything from the game, positive or negative, the same way in retrospect with the Bengals defense the night before. I'm not getting overly excited about how bad they played or how good they played or whatever. It's preseason. It's come show me week one. Like we know what the Bengals defense is, but with Shedeur, with him being a rookie, we've not seen him on an NFL team before. Obviously, with him being a rookie, what his coaches do after a game with those numbers and that performance, that tells me more than the actual game itself. I don't know if that even makes sense to you, but
no, you're right. Like that was my kind of point about the Bengals too, because people were trying to just brush under like how bad the defense was, like just trying to brush it off, like, oh, it's preseason. I'm like, well, hold on. I think we've seen that same defense look putrid a year ago, and yes, it's preseason, but they look just as bad in that one preseason. Like we know what they looked like last year, and they look the same. Can they get better? Yes, but like I think there is reasons to be concerned because there was no signs of improvement at all. And then the same thing with the offense. I'm not going to get overly excited about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase and company because that's what they do. Like that's what they do. But
the surprising thing there would have been if they would have came out and they actually looked like trash. That was a surprising thing. Yeah,
or just say, hey, there's some timing issues, yada yada, blah blah. Offensive line, whatever. Right. Shedeur was supposed to be bad. They didn't have the ones backup offensive line. There was a lot of things that could have gone wrong, and they didn't. And that's because he overcame those. I don't think he's the starter. I don't think any of that stuff. But I mean, I have a hard time believing, and I could be wrong. And this is why I want Dillon Gabriel. I don't want Dillon Gabriel out there with the ones on Friday or whenever they play next. I want Dillon Gabriel with the same group that Shedeur just had. And I want to see if Dillon Gabriel elevates those guys. And if Dillon Gabriel elevates them at the same level, okay, good quarterback competition. But if they look flat with Dillon Gabriel and the offense doesn't look the same as it did with Shedeur leading it with the same group, I want Shedeur to start the preseason game. Let's see if he can replicate what he did last week with the ones against ones, and let's see if Dillon Gabriel can do the same thing, elevate the talent, the second tier talent around him the way that Shedeur did. I would love to see if that's the route that they're going to go. I don't want to see Kenny freaking Pickett, and I don't want to see Joe Flacco. I want to see Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. I think Cleveland needs to put a lot of emphasis on those two for the remainder of camp.
I agree with that, and I also agree that I think you could probably almost just get rid of Pickett right now. Releasing, trading. Maybe you could get something from somebody, maybe a draft pick or something. Just float it out there. I'm not saying that is what would happen, but I mean, I don't see any reason to keep Pickett on the roster at this point. But moving on to the next one, the Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals thing, and you and I have talked about this one ad nauseum, and I don't really think much has changed here. I mean, it's a fun talking point that that he thinks that he's gonna sign the weekend of Labor Day. Quite honestly, I think that's what he wants to happen more than what I think he is on the inside knows is what's going to happen. I don't think anything's changed on that front. I really don't. I don't really necessarily think that the Bengals are even thinking that anything is going to change. I don't see. I'm kind of like you. Like, what if it was going to be signed the week of Labor Day? Then why not just get it signed now?
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense to me. Like, if all of a sudden Labor Day comes and if that's the case, I'm with you. I will lose even more respect for the Bengals front office than what the little bit that I do have now. Because if it took it all the way to the week before week one for you to go, oh, hey, we need to sign this guy. Well, then what was the last 6-8 months then? Like, what was this? It's just a sideshow and just trying to get the Bengals in the news. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. But then again, nothing typically seems to make sense with the Bengals in the offseason. The bigger thing that I wanted to hit is the part that you just brought up with Ohio State. And yes, I know I'm the other side of the aisle of this argument, and most people don't really take what I have to say on this. But I was also the same guy who was a McCord backer. And I know that's easy to say because Michigan beat McCord and stuff like that. But when you really go back and look at what McCord did that season and look what he did in that game, I think he performed better than what a lot of people, I guess, give him credit for. And it's to me, it's real easy to give Will Howard the credit for what happened in that playoff. And to me, it takes away from what that defense did. I'm not trying to minimize what Will Howard did. Like, he played very well. I just don't take that as me minimizing anything he did, because I do think he did well. But I also do believe that defense was a major, and did I say it again, major part of the reason why you guys did what you did.
Well, hold up on that. I mean, I get what you're saying. Yeah. You have to have a good defense to win that championship. But if all things are equal, if you look at Texas's defense, it was really good. Ohio State's defense really good. It came down to who was the better quarterback. Oregon and Ohio State came down to defense, and it also came down to who had the better quarterback. Same thing with Tennessee, and ultimately Notre Dame, the best defense in college football. The difference was really good defense in Ohio State, really good defense in Notre Dame. One had Will Howard and the other didn't. I think it's all because of Will Howard. A lot of teams go into this playoff with really, really good defense. You have to have that special it factor, and that it factor was Will Howard to me.
This is the problem that I get into, and now my Michigan side will come out. This is my side. This is the problem that I have, and I already know.
Your team had really, really good defense last year. They had no quarterback.
That's my point.
You need a quarterback. And Ohio State has a quarterback.
That's my. You talking about 2024? You talking about 2024? You talking about 2023? Because I was going to compare 2023 Michigan to 2024 Ohio State. Was what I was going to do. To me, Will Howard's performances in the playoff look really nice because the defense propped him up. Like, if you want me to buy in on the JJ isn't that good stuff, then I can see the Will Howard side of the JJ argument. Okay. So the only difference between JJ and Will Howard is he didn't have an Oregon game. That's it.
I mean, he
The
threw
other
for
game-
300 yards against Oregon. I didn't like how he ended that Oregon game, but
That's my point. Like JJ threw for 250, 275 against Alabama. He threw for almost 275 against Washington, but it all gets washed under the rug because the running game and the defense that was played against those two teams. The same thing here. The Tennessee game, I don't think that was as much as that. The score was 45-10 or 45-17, whatever it was. The defense completely stifled Tennessee's offense.
311 yards and 2 touchdowns. Will Howard wasn't just out there quarterbacking a defense that led him to a win. I mean,
I'm not saying
against
that he
Oregon,
didn't do
319 yards, 3 touchdowns. He averaged 300 yards a game, 2 touchdowns a game. I mean, he literally he elevated. That defense was good all season. Will Howard was not that all season. Will Howard took them over that he pushed them over that edge. He got them to that national championship. Regular season Will Howard, they don't win that championship if they get regular season Will Howard. Only one time did he throw for over 300 yards, and that was against Oregon on October 12th. Outside of that, everything was under 300 yards. I see a 209, I see a 228, I see a 182, a 175, a 201. And then all of a sudden just erupts for 311, 319, 289, 231, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. That Will Howard didn't exist in the regular season. Will Howard was the difference in the playoffs.
I'm not going to, I'll raise my hand. That shuts me up. It does.
That was fun.
I can't be a guy who talks about stats and talks about this and that, and then when the stats are thrown in my face, I don't know. That's weird to me that I didn't realize it was that vast of a difference.
Well, no, the only reason
that one caught me off guard.
The only reason I lean into that so heavily is because Kev was on me all season. I kept saying there's just something about Will Howard I don't like. There's just something about him. He'll make a good throw, but I don't feel like as good as this offense looks at times. And they put up like 50 and 3 of the first 4 weeks of the season. I mean, they averaged 30, but there was just something about the offense I did not like. There was just something off. And it was Will Howard. I just wasn't sold on Will Howard. And so I would just track everything he did all season to have ammo for me and Kev's debates. And then I was like, I was quiet about it during the playoff because I'm like, okay, this isn't the same. It was just the throws he was making, the attempts too. I mean, they leaned into the pass game. I think they learned in that game against Michigan. They were so, and this could be a Ryan Day problem too. They were so obsessed with trying to be as balanced of a team as possible, which you want to be, but they really leaned into the pass game more than the run game in that playoff run, and they separated themselves big time. But the defense was consistent. That defense was good all season. And yes, it was lights out against Tennessee offense. So, I mean, Tennessee's offense, you had to respect that. You had to respect Oregon's offense that put 30 on them earlier in the season. Texas had Quinn Ewers and NFL offensive talent. That defense did what it was supposed to. It dominated, though. Yeah.
I think, and I'll meet you definitely halfway on that, and I'll definitely give the props to Will Howard, but I'll also meet you halfway on that other side too. Is the defense took a step too. I really do, and I don't know. What they were doing with Downs in the playoffs is still just unbelievable to me. And if Patricia can do anything with Downs like that this season, Ohio State's defense is just going to be just as nasty. But about the Will Howard and the offensive stuff, that one shut me up. That's no BS. But back to this season, I don't know. I just find it hard to freak out about Ohio State and their quarterback situation and their offense. I always have this feeling that it's going to get worked out. And by the time Penn State comes around, you're going to know that Sain's the quarterback and he's a performer during the game. He's not a performer during practice. And I think once week 1 gets here in the Texas game, we're going to see who that starting quarterback is. And I think it's going to be Julian Sain, and then Ohio State will be off and running. But that's pretty much all I got. I'll talk to you later. Go Blue. Peace.
To go Blue. He gets that in every time. It's the Justin Kidder Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits.
To the Justin Kinner Show, right here on ESPN Dayton, 1410 Wing AM.
A year ago, the Reds were 56-61, and well, we had already basically just tuned the Reds out. We had given up on the Reds a year ago at this time. So I'll take this meaningful. I'll take meaningful games in August any day. I think this is pretty cool. The Reds are a game and a half out of a wild card spot right now as we sit here today on August 11th. A year ago at this time, again, 56-61 is basically where the Reds stood. And again, right now, 62-57. They're 12 games out of the division. Not giving them a chance for the division, but a game and a half out of that wild card spot. 62-57. They have a 2-game cushion on the Cardinals, who are below them. They're looking up at the New York Mets, who have lost 7 straight. The Reds have to keep finding ways to win. They have to keep, at the end of the day, Terry Francona said it best in the postgame yesterday, because people keep making so much about where the Reds are in the standings. The bottom line is the Reds, they keep yo-yoing on the year. They'll get to a game and a half within a game. Then they'll be 3.5 games. And then they'll get to 2.5. They've been living around that 2.5 game marker for a while now. But Terry Francona said it best. The only thing we can control is us winning. If we win, we'll be all right. Now, normally I roll my eyes at coach speak. I always get a kick out of that. But in this particular situation, he's not wrong. As long as the Reds continue to win, they'll be just fine. They'll be just fine. Now, the problem is they got a very good Phillies team coming up, and they got a very good Brewers team coming up. They have 6 straight home games. 6 straight home games, but they're all against first-place teams. And I think that's the concern, at least as we sit here right now. The Angels are coming up next week. They're 56-62. They're within strike. I mean, they're 6 games out of the American League wild card. And then you got the Diamondbacks, and then you got the Dodgers again in Los Angeles, and then you got the Cardinals. The Reds' schedule gets a little tougher here. They've been fortunate. But the only thing they can control is just continue to win games, because the opportunity is there. The Cubs are just average right now. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They've lost a series to the Reds since the All-Star break, but they're 67-50. They've lost control of that division. It's the Brewers now. So the Cubs' only hope is to hold on to this wild card spot, and I think they're okay. I do think that the Cubs and the Padres are going to be, I think that's going to be your top 2 wild card teams right there, are going to be the Cubs and the Padres. What it's really going to come down to is it's going to be the Cardinals, it's going to be the Mets, and it's going to be the Reds, and possibly the Giants. The Giants are 59-59. They're even at 500. They've played the Reds twice. They've split both series, or they've won a series. The Reds have won a series. So it's really going to be between the Reds and the Mets at this point, and the Cardinals aren't going away either. I mean, the Reds are one bad week away from the Cardinals jumping them, and like I said, they do have the Cardinals coming up at the end of the month. And they have a lot of games with the Cardinals left. I think that this Cardinals series for the remainder of the year, I mean, as we sit here on August 11th, it's wild to me, because I'm seeing I see a 3-game series at Great American Ballpark on August 29th, 30th, and 31st. And then, of course, they go to St. Louis on September 15th, 16th, and 17th. And the Reds still have 4 more with the Cubs. What I'm fearing is that if they're going to be fighting for their playoff lives, they have Milwaukee to close out the regular season on September 26th, 27th, and 28th. But here's what's also wild. I'm not used to having to really prioritize Reds talk at this time of year. Like, September usually doesn't exist for me as a Reds fan. For you, for us, collectively, we are all Reds fans. Man, this is kind of fun, sitting here at the midway point of August and excited for Reds games, while also keeping an eye on the camp news for the Browns and the Bengals and the Buckeyes. But guys, can you imagine? It's been a while for me. I've worked here at WING. I started in 2014, and the Reds have been bad every year I've been here. I don't count the 2020 COVID season where they made the playoffs. It just wasn't a normal season, obviously. But every year my Reds coverage is done. I started full-time being on air in 2018. Like, in my full on-air full-time career, never been able to talk about meaningful Reds games this deep into the season. So I'm loving this, okay? I'm having a blast with it. But I really started to think about it. I'm like, man, you look at this, like, the NFL season's going to kick off on September 7th, right? On September 7th, and Ohio State kicks off the week before that. I mean, we're going to get we're going to get about 4 or 5 Ohio State games, 3 or 4 NFL games, and still also sprinkling in meaningful Reds talk that doesn't include, hey guys, Reds Fest is coming up in the next couple of months. And gee, I wonder what bottom of the barrel pitcher the Reds are going to get in the offseason. There's plenty of time to get to that. But we're going to talk about meaningful games. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Big series that starts tonight with the Phillies. 6:10 is the first pitch, and 5:40 is when pregame coverage begins. Now, the Reds are 62-57. Okay, the Mets are the only team ahead of them right now in that final wild card spot, and the Mets have lost 7 straight. They are free-falling. I did see, since June 1st, the Mets have, the worst record of Major League Baseball. Kind of wild. And the Reds have capitalized on it. They took 2 or 3 from the Mets in New York coming out of the All-Star break. That was a huge series to set the tone, especially with the trade deadline that was looming, and then, of course, just trying to figure out what direction the franchise was going to go into. But despite the fact that we're talking about the Reds playing meaningful games, and by the way, they're 12-10, all right, 22 games since the All-Star break, and they are 12-10 in that, which is, again, a team that's 5 games above 500. They've been very consistent. They've been very consistent at being inconsistent, which has driven me nuts, you nuts, everybody nuts. But again, talking about meaningful games here, I thought the way they bounced back, the fact that they dropped the first 2 games of the Pirates, I thought that the free fall was starting. They had lost 3 straight, but the way they battled back, took games 3 and 4 in Pittsburgh, with obviously, Nick Martinez and obviously Chase Burns on the mound to capitalize on that is huge. I love the fact that they have Andrew Abbott tonight with Brady Singer in game 2, and then most importantly, Hunter Green on Wednesday night. Hunter Green's making his return. So here's the big question, Reds fans. Now that Hunter Green is back, and Lodolo, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a very lengthy IL appearance, so that's good. But with all things being even, let's say everyone being healthy, there's an odd man out in this rotation. Keep in mind, they went and got Lytle from the Rays so that they could take Nick Martinez and go enhance the bullpen. But they still have an odd man out. Okay, they still have an odd man out because as we sit here right now, I'm taking a look at this. If you have Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo 1 and 2 with Andrew Abbott at 3, you have Brady Singer at 4, you have Lytle at 5. What do you do with Chase Burns? I thought that was a weird move at the deadline because I thought, okay, that move was just done to get Nick Martinez in the bullpen. But I always thought something was up because when you got to make a plan as if your whole rotation's healthy. And when this whole rotation's healthy, you got 6 guys. Are you going to move one of those veterans? But you're not moving Hunter Green to the bullpen. You're not moving Brady Singer. You didn't bring Lytle over to move into the bullpen. Andrew Abbott, this is his best season ever as a starter for the Reds. You're not going to mess with him. But Chase Burns has had a historic start to his rookie year. He has 4 straight games striking out 4 or more batters. What do you do with Chase Burns? There's a lot of chatter regarding the uncertainty of what the Reds are going to do with him. And the options are potentially moving him to the bullpen, which I'm not necessarily against. But also, he is rolling right now as a starter, striking out 10 or more batters in 4 straight outings. Do you really take that firepower out of your rotation? As much as I would love him in the bullpen, do you really risk that? That's the one option. The second option is, and this is where it gets interesting, Reds fans. The second option is shutting him down. Can you imagine shutting him down while the Reds are a game and a half out of a wild card spot where they're well in the mix of things? Man, oh man. Reds fans will lose their mind if that's the case. Charlie Goldsmith had a conversation with Terry Francona. Terry Francona said that they met with Chase Burns today. There is no set finalized plan yet, as there are moving pieces in the rotation. There is an innings limit that they may have to get creative, and they really want to keep him pitching without having to be shut down. Shutting him down is an option. I'm here to tell you, shutting him down is not an option. I understand wanting to be a little careful. Maybe you shouldn't have called him up when you did. I thought it was silly to call him up when they did. I honestly thought that the time to call Chase Burns up was the game that he ultimately started technically to begin with, which was the Speedway Classic game against the Braves back on August 2nd. I said that August 2nd should have been the game that they circled and said, we're going to get Chase Burns called up to debut against the Braves. I thought that's the direction they were going in. So that if you did get into the innings count and the innings limit and all that, that you would have so little of the back half of the season remaining that it wouldn't be an issue. And I just find this really strange that the Reds would consider shutting him down. There is a part of me that kind of believes that the Reds wouldn't be foolish enough to shut him down. I think that they are saying things like this to maybe preemptively prepare Reds fans for what is ultimately going to happen. One of their pitchers who has thrown 10 or more strikeouts in 4 straight outings being moved to the bullpen. And I don't think it's the worst decision in the world. I just find it strange. Reds fans, I'm curious your thoughts. They are a game and a half out of a wild card spot right now. The Mets are free falling. That final spot is the Reds for their taking. It's the Reds for the taking. Like, it's insane to me. The opportunity, the way at the beginning of the season when everything that could go wrong went wrong. It's wild to me that everything is just setting itself up perfectly for the Reds to latch onto a playoff spot and not let go. So in the midst of that, can you imagine going to bed one night, waking up, checking your phone, and seeing breaking news, the Reds have shut down Chase Burns? You would lose your mind, so would I. Second best scenario, or the best case scenario, if those are your scenarios of shutting him down or operating with the innings count that ultimately says to me they're going to put him in the bullpen, because if you're operating with an innings count, you don't want to continue throwing him out there for 5, 6, 7 outings at a time. If for one start you can get useful innings out of him over 3, 4 games per one start, I kind of understand that too. But I also think it's stupid to operate with the innings count at this point. Does it sound reckless of me? Probably. The stat nerds, the baseball nerds out there, all of you are like, well, I know we're a game and a half out of the playoffs right now, but we probably need to be a little careful and operate with an innings count because why? Nothing's promised. You know how hard it is to even get to this point. And by the way, the Reds are at this point because of a lot of things that haven't gone right for other teams. You can't count on this front office to make enough moves to where you can be confident that you're going to be within a game and a half of a wild card spot at this point of the season. I don't trust the Reds front office to go get weapons in the offseason. And I don't trust that the Mets, with all the money they spent on this roster, are always going to be free-falling at this time. All right? I'm not going to count on the Cardinals always being a mid-tier franchise at this point. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to count on that. There's so many teams that free-falled that normally don't. The Reds are lucky that the Giants aren't the Giants that we thought they were going to be. The Diamondbacks, they took major steps back. All right? We're lucky. By the way, if the Braves were having the season that they were supposed to, the Reds are probably more than a game and a half back of a wild card spot. Let's just be honest. Okay? The Cubs are going nowhere. The Padres are going nowhere anytime soon. And what I mean is like they're going to be contenders moving forward. The Cubs aren't going anywhere. They're only going to get better. The same thing with the Padres. The same thing with the Mets, who continue to spend an ungodly amount of money. All right? The Cardinals, you could never count them out. The Giants, Diamondbacks, they're always right there in the mix of things. The Braves, they have way too much talent to repeat being this poor a season from now. So many teams had to plummet for the Reds to be a game and a half out. The Reds haven't been good this year. They haven't been great this year. They're 5 games above 500. Their offense is so inconsistently bad. They make you want to rip your hair out. The Reds at a game and a half out are more of a product of the bad teams around them more than what they're doing. Now, they're doing what they're supposed to. They're winning at opportune times. But nobody, I mean, the Mets are a wild card team right now. No one in the Mets organization or their fan base feels like winners right now. They're holding on to that final wild card spot. I think it's safe to say that I could be a little critical of the Reds, who are a game and a half out, and say I think it has a lot more to do with the free-falling Mets, the Cubs struggling the way that they are, the Braves just completely falling apart this year. The National League is too damn competitive, and I don't trust the Reds front office that a year from now that they're just going to automatically be in the hunt again. Chase Burns, the kid's showing no signs of slowing down. In fact, to his credit, and I've said it before, I don't think any pitcher has ever had a tougher stretch of a debut than him. opening up against the Yankees. Game 2, his second start of his career at Boston, at Fenway Park. His third start of his career against Philadelphia, a top 5 lineup in baseball. They're going up against Philadelphia tonight. He also was supposed to start in front of 85,000 fans at Bristol Motor Speedway in the Speedway Classic. No other rookie pitcher has ever had to debut against more tough competition or situations or scenarios, to me, than the Reds' number 1 pitching prospect in Chase Burns. Has he looked lights out every time? Absolutely not. But he's damn near unhittable. For a kid that has not figured it all out yet, he's damn near unhittable, striking out 10 or more batters in 4 straight games. And we're literally having the conversation about shutting this kid down when you're a game and a half out of the wild card spot. And a lot of it has less to do with what you're doing and more to do with the free-falling Mets, the Cardinals not being as good as what we thought they were going to be, the Giants and Diamondbacks taking a step back, the Braves, who have talent all over that roster, who should have been a World Series contender, they're out and down and out of it. And you're going to count on all of those cards falling in your favor again a year from now? Because we damn sure know the front office is not going to put you in position to be aggressive in the offseason. So it is absolutely insanely ridiculous to me that the Reds are even considering shutting this kid down. And I don't even know if I like them moving him to the bullpen. But I'm here to tell you, none of this is being discussed or considered. They've already made their mind up. They made their mind up the second they made the trade for Lytle from the A's and moved Nick Martinez to the bullpen. They made a trade for another starter knowing that when healthy, you have 5 starters. They knew a completely healthy rotation: Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Brady Singer, Chase Burns. And they went and got Lytle anyways. And you had Nick Martinez as a starter. You moved into the bullpen. Now, Hunter Green's coming back. He returns on Wednesday. Nick Lodolo is going to be back here shortly as well. I would much rather, guys, honestly, I would much rather the Reds go 6-man rotation route than move Chase Burns out. I don't know. I haven't seen enough of Lytle either. I haven't seen enough positive things of Lytle for me to sit here and feel good about. I mean, I think you're gonna weaken your rotation if you take Chase Burns out. I don't know. I'm fascinated by what the Reds are going to do, how they're going to set this all up. Lytle has not been lights out to me since arriving in Cincinnati. He just hasn't. All right. I'm not a fan of it. He's had 2 starts with the Reds. All right. The first start was solid, at the Cubs, 7 innings. All right. He gave up 3 hits, 1, but he goes just under 5 innings, giving up 4 runs on 9 hits against Pittsburgh over the weekend on Sunday. And I felt like the Reds needed that. They needed him to pitch lights out. By the way, you sit there and say, well, the Reds won. That's fine. Yeah, because the Reds, who get shut out all the time against good pitching, if you're in a playoff series and you have Lytle going up against a very good pitching staff and he has one of those performances, do you really think that the Reds are going to put up 14 runs like they did? No, they're not. To me, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake with all this shutting Chase Burns down talk. I hate baseball. If that, you're going to see me throw the biggest temper tantrum, on-air meltdown if I ever see that news that they're going to shut Chase Burns down in the middle of a playoff race. That is absolutely weak. This isn't a well-run franchise. This isn't a franchise that makes decisions that I'm going to be confident that we could be right back here a year from now. I don't feel confident in that, which means you can't sit here and act like, oh, we'll be right back there again. This is a team that's made the playoffs twice in 3 decades or whatever it is. Not twice, but in the last 15 years, they've made it 1 time. Since 2012, 13, whatever it was, the last time they made it. I mean, it's insane. And to sit here and act like, well, we're going to shut them down. We're close right now, but we'll be right back here next year. You can't say it. You can't convince me of that. You can't convince yourself of that. But you buy into the new modern stat nerd baseball that, well, you're going to let the innings cut. Stop it. The only stat that matters is winning. And you can't convince me that the Reds are a better team by shutting him down. And you can't convince me that that's a way to convince me that you're taking this stuff serious at the end of the day. I think that's absolutely insane. I don't want to hear any of that talk. Shaw, thank you for clearing that. Yes, Reds have made the playoffs 3 times since 1995. Since 1995, the Reds have made the playoffs 3 times. And you find yourself a game and a half out of a playoff spot, and I'm actually reading reports that the Reds are considering shutting him down because he's on an innings count. And they need to find a way to limit his usage. Yes, that's what we want. A starting pitcher that has struck out 10 or more batters in 4 straight games. It's something that only 2 of the rookie pitchers have done in the history of baseball. And in the midst of pushing for a playoff spot, the Reds are not trying to find ways to get better. They're trying to minimize the usage of one of their best pitchers. I don't get it. By the way, you want to minimize his usage? Miss the playoffs. Everyone's going to have plenty of time to rest. It's a good thing that if you're worried about overusage of your players because you got to play into October, that's a good problem to have. And it's something that the Reds have not had to worry about, well, in quite some time. The Justin Kinner Show, 937-518-1410. If the Reds truly did, and I do think it's more likely, we're going to see Chase Burns move to the bullpen. They're setting it up. They've already told you. They made the decision already. I think they're just kind of dropping hints because they know the blow. They know there's going to be a heavy outcry and criticism. I think they're moving the tea leaves around a little bit for us to read on our own. It started when they went and made the trade for Lido at the deadline. And now it starts with, of course, Terry Francona referencing the innings count. None of us knew about this innings limit. We should have known better, though. But why make moves at the deadline to position yourself for the playoffs if you're going to just find ways to take your best players off the field because of innings count? He's showing no signs of slowing down. He's only showing signs of getting better and stronger and more durable. 937-518-1410. If the Reds moved Chase Burns to the bullpen, your reaction would be what? It sounds like it's going to happen. We'll discuss more next. 937-518-1410, the number to call and jump in on the conversation. I'm talking Reds here. The Reds will be in action tonight, game 1 between the Reds and the Phillies at Great American Ballpark. Of course, the Reds return home after a little lengthy road trip. They look to get it going tonight. Of course, as far as the Reds are concerned, 22 games coming out of the All-Star break. They're 12-10. They're a game and a half out of a wild card spot as we sit here right now. On the mound tonight, Andrew Abbott. That's exactly who I really want on the mound tonight. Especially with they need this Philly series. They have 6 straight at home, but man, Philly's a first place team. The Brewers are a first place team. The Reds are a game and a half out of a playoff spot. The Cubs are sitting in that top wild card spot, but they're 5-5 in their last 10. They've just been playing average baseball, and the Reds got the best of them just last week at Wrigley. Sitting in second, the Brewers, not the Brewers, I'm sorry, the Padres have got hot as of late. And they're sitting firmly in that second wild card spot. And I don't think they're going anywhere. I like the Padres. I thought that they underperformed for most of the season, and they're starting to get hot at the right time. Not only are they sitting in that second spot in the wild card, they're the second in the West behind the Dodgers, which you're probably like, okay, yeah, it's the Dodgers. Guys, the Dodgers are 68-50. All right. And the Padres are 66-52. They're only 2 games behind the Dodgers for first place in the West. The Reds could very easily be battling it out with the Dodgers just as much as the Padres for one of those final wild card spots. But the Cubs are going to take that. They're going to be right there in the wild card. So are the Padres. I'm confident in that. It's that third one that's up for grabs. And the New York Mets are 63-55. Okay. And they've lost. They're 1-9 in their last 10. They've lost 7 straight. You want to talk about the ultimate free fall. That's what they're doing right now. So a big series for the Reds against the Phillies and the Brewers, who have just owned the Reds. But here's the pitching. Here's who the Reds have on the mound for the next 3 games against the Phillies. You have Andrew Abbott, Brady Singer, and Hunter Green makes his return. I love the fact that you have Andrew Abbott and Hunter Green pitching 2 of the next 3 against the Phillies. You're going to get Abbott twice over the next, these series right here, which is huge because Andrew Abbott tonight, and then you're going to get Andrew Abbott on the back end of that Brewers series coming up a week from tonight. So that's huge, having him pitch 2 of the next 5 games as far as that's concerned. So we'll keep an eye on 6, if you will. But Hunter Green making his return has all of a sudden led to people asking Francona a lot of questions. And one of the questions he was asked is, well, what's this rotation going to look like when Nick Lodolo gets back? Because it's 5-man rotation. You have 6 starting pitchers. You traded for Lido at the deadline. You moved Nick Martinez to the bullpen. You called Chase Burns up a month and some change ago. And now it's just sit and watch. Hunter, when this rotation's fully healthy, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Brady Singer, and you have Lido, who you just got from the A's, and Chase Burns. And technically Nick Martinez, who is a starter as well, but he's now in the bullpen. Technically he's a starter because you have Lodolo out, but it's wild because these questions are starting to be asked. And I thought it was some weird moves that were being made that kind of led me to say, hey, this isn't something that they're concerned about. I think they've already thought about it and they've already made their decision. So I read this tweet a little bit ago and I want to get your guys' reaction that the Reds are going to have to get creative as they manage Chase Burns' innings count. They have to manage his innings down the stretch this season. The plan, even for the rest of the week, is to be determined due to moving pieces. Nick Krall, Terry Francona, and Chase Burns have all spoke about where things stand. Chase Burns, according to Charlie Goldsmith, this is new, he is open to the bullpen, but the plan is still to be determined. Chase Burns tells Charlie Goldsmith, I don't care as long as I'm throwing and I feel good. I'm open to the bullpen, whatever I need to do to help the team win. We'll see if it happens. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. No, Chase Burns, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If it happens, because it sounds like that's the only option the Reds have, because if they're going to stick to this stupid innings count, I think it's okay to have a plan and adjust it as you see fit. Sticking to a plan and not moving on from it is kind of silly, especially if Chase Burns is showing no signs of slowing down. It's not like he was in the rotation on opening day. He wasn't in the rotation in April, May, or June. This is a guy that they called up in July, and it's August 11th. I'm not a fan of this move whatsoever. I guess it was June. It was he made his debut against the Yankees, so that was in June. But guys, it was June 23rd or whatever. We're not even 2 months into the season. If you were going to call one of your best pitching prospect up, knowing you could only use him for 2 months, did you even plan on making the playoffs to begin with? So this talk of innings limit is ridiculous. I could see if he was starting to slow down, he's only getting better and better. Chase Burns literally has struck out 10 or more batters 4 straight outings, and he's gotten better and better each outing. I get wanting to have a plan. You don't want to overexert him. Does he look like a pitcher that's been overexerted? I don't think so. Not even a little bit. I just think that this is absolute weak sauce at the end of the day, sitting here talking about moving this kid. He has struck out 57 batters in 8 games. And by the way, 40 or more of those have come in the last 4. I think it's a big mistake to even discuss an innings count. You can monitor it, monitor his innings, monitor his production, and if it starts to get a little crazy, okay, I get it. But when he's showing no signs of slowing down and you're a game and a half out of a wild card spot, I think it's absolutely reckless of an organization who, by the way, it's not like they're well run. It's not like they make enough good decisions that could justify, like, it's okay, we'll be right back here a year from now. 3 playoff appearances since 1995. And we're going to sit here and say, in the middle of a playoff run, we're going to pull one of our best players because, don't worry, we'll have him for that next year at this time. You could be 10 games out. Like I said, I've been doing sports talk radio for 10 plus years. This is the first time I've actually been able to talk about meaningful games in August. Let's go to Keith. Keith, thanks for holding. How are you, my friend?
Okay, Justin. Hey, fine. And I'm really looking forward to this football this year. I think it's going to be fun.
Wait, are you a Reds fan, Keith? You got anything on the Reds?
Oh, man. I believe college football.
Oh, well, we're not talking college football, Keith. Call back when we're talking college football. I know people want to talk college football. This is the thing. I want to talk college football too, but the Cincinnati Reds, this idea that we're going to shut them down is ridiculous to me as far as that's concerned. But good for Chase Burns. I like that mentality. You know, I think he's a starting pitcher. He wants to be a starting pitcher, but I think he wants to be a part of something special if this team makes the playoffs. And if this team makes the playoffs, he wants to be a part of it. And I think it's ridiculous if he helps get this team to the playoffs and then he's shut down before he could be a part of it. Even when the Reds are doing something un-Reds-like, they do something very Reds-like. Not a fan. Not a fan. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. The Dayton Weight Loss Secret program has successfully helped thousands of people lose 20 to 30 pounds in their first month or 2. To hear more about the Dayton Weight Loss Secret program, schedule your free consultation in person or virtually by calling 937-999-1480 or online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. I started the Dayton Weight Loss Secret program back on July 1st. I weighed 210. I weighed myself over the weekend. I'm at 185. I was 210 pounds on July 1st. I'm at 185 right now. And Dr. Justin and his team, they've been awesome to work with. And I've tried weight loss stuff in the past. It hasn't worked, or it worked for a bit and then it would stop. And some of that's because of me. But I absolutely love everything about the Dayton Weight Loss Secret program. And I jumped on it into the deep end on day 1, and the results, I mean, the weight just started falling off right away. There's no injections. There's no prepackaged meals that look better on the box. And then when you open them and warm them up, they look nothing like the box, right? Like, there's none of that. There's no endless workouts, none of that. It's just simply following the program, and Dr. Justin and his team will tell you all about it. Give them a call for the free consultation. Take advantage of that. They're going to tell you about the program, tell you how, if you want to start a weight loss journey, how they can help you. In fact, right now, if you bring a friend or a spouse with you and you both enroll, you'll get 15% off the program. So make sure you hurry in today. This is an August special only. So if you want to bring in your significant other, you want to bring in a friend, family member with you, and you both sign up for a weight loss program, you'll get it at 15% off. But guys, I'm telling you, it's quick results. Like 20 to 30 pounds on average is what is what those people lose who joined the program in the first month or two. And to go from 210 to 185, and I'm not doing the injections or any of that. I'm not judging those who do, by the way. I'm just saying I didn't want to go that route. The results have been very, very cool to watch, and for it to fall off, it's definitely been life-changing as far as that's concerned. So give Dayton Weight Loss Secret a call today, 937-999-1480, or online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. The Justin Kidder Show. More Reds talk, Bengals, Buckeyes, Reds, and more. Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Reds and Phillies, 6:10 the first pitch, 5:40 coverage begins right here on 1410 Wing AM. We'll be right back.